Hello, hello. Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to more of Dad, Thad, and my skateboard. Today we are on part 6. Here we go. I sat on the sandy, slightly rocky shore of Lake Mead and pulled my knees to my chest underneath my navy sweatshirt. This was a different beach than my friends and I ever went to. The wind was barely a breeze here, and this early in the morning, the water looked like glass. Several idle speedboats bobbed in the water. Shadows of people with wakeboards and wetsuits ambled everywhere on shore. Some were shouting instructions to others. I tried to find Thad, but it was just too dark to see anyone clearly. Suddenly, a plethora of lights turned on all at once. Lights on the front of boats and on the back of boats. And for the first time, I noticed there were people in the water because their life jackets lit up, and so did the ropes they were holding that were attached to the back of the speedboats. A booming voice called out, "Now!" And at the same moment, all speedboats kicked into gear, and simultaneously, 8 people stood up on their wakeboards. I cheered loudly, but I don't think I was heard. Then I watched in awe as all 4 boats zigzagged in between each other in an organized fashion. Each boat had 2 wakeboarders behind it, and all of them began weaving in and out of the wake, exactly opposite of each other, all the while glowing with the same yellow light. I stood and watched in utter amazement. This was more than wakeboarding. This was a professional show. Now that the lake was full of lingering waves from the boats, each wakeboarder jumped the waves with precision and skill. At last, a horn blew, and every wakeboarder let go of their rope and glided across the water with their arms held high. Then all the lights went out, and it was pitch black again. I laughed and cheered and clapped. A few others that were on the shore with me did the same. I wanted to shout, "Do it again!" but I didn't. Yet someone there must have been telepathic, because they did do it again, and again and again. And each time I loved it. Then the sun began peeking over the mountains. The group show stopped so the individuals could work on their own stunts. I still hadn't spotted Thad, and the sun came up at the very angle I was trying to look at. I grabbed my sunglasses that were hanging on the neckline of my sweatshirt and put them over my eyes. I could not find a slightly shaggy blonde head. Obviously, Thad's hair would be wet. And I couldn't find a tan-toned body because they were all wearing wetsuits. And I couldn't look for a crazy good wakeboarder because they were all crazy good. "Look, there he is, Mommy. I found him. I found Thad." I whipped my head around and spotted a 7 or 8-year-old boy, pointing his finger at the lake. He had the same bright blonde hair as Thad, but much shorter. I squinted in the direction the boy was pointing, but since I was several yards away from him, I still couldn't tell who he meant. But then the boy said, "He's the one having the most fun." I looked again, and there he was. Of course. Thad's body language said it all. Every jump he made had an added flair. He moved in and out of the wake with a steady rhythm and remarkable ease. Sometimes he would move across with swift speed, and other times he was slow and powerful as he pushed his board deeper into the water. It was incredible. And yes, his coach did have him practice the same stunt over and over, like Connor had said. But I didn't care. I could have watched it all day. Then all the drills started to slow down, and more people came to shore. I saw Thad jump out of a boat and pull it onto the bank with a man who must have been his coach. I wanted to run over to Thad right away, but the coach kept talking to him with large gestures, jumping up and down as if he were on a wakeboard, as he continued to give instructions. Thad looked very engaged in the conversation and seemed to be asking a lot of questions. They continued talking and talking. So I sat back down in the sand and pulled out my mandarin oranges that I had stashed away in my sweatshirt. In doing so, I overheard the little boy speaking to his mom again. "Dude, did you see that one jump where Thad was like..." Then the boy jumped up and down, throwing his ankles up to one side and touching them as best he could. I chuckled at this. The kid was cute. Of course he was. He was Thad's brother. I peered over at the family with the boy. There was another little girl, younger than the boy, probably 3 or 4, and another girl who was probably Jace's age or older. They all sat on a large blanket, eating some kind of finger food breakfast. The mom sat in a camping chair, wearing a yellow and green sundress. The dad wore a dark green t-shirt and swim shorts, and sat on a camping chair next to her. At least I think it was the dad. Then the boy said, "Hey Dad, can I have another banana?" Assumption confirmed. He was the dad. He and Thad's mom were holding hands and talking. Pleasantly talking. When was the last time my mom and dad did that? Not that it mattered anymore. Then the older girl stood. She wore a lacy maroon sleeveless shirt, with jean shorts and a belt. She had long, thin legs, but was still shorter than Thad. Her blonde hair was darker than the boy's, and she had it tied up in a messy bun, almost exactly like mine. She whipped out her phone and put it to her ear. "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh yeah, it was awesome. Thad is doing so good. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins this year." Wow, a sister who cared about her brother. An older sister, no less. Then she spotted me looking at her. Quickly, I turned my head and plopped another wedge of orange in my mouth. "Okay, I'll talk to you later," the girl said. Then I heard her footsteps come near me. I glanced up at her in surprise. "Hey, do you go to Boulder High?" she asked me. "Oh no, I live in Seattle. I'm just here for the summer." "Oh, okay. You just look like one of my friend's sisters." "Nope, only child." "Hey, are you Thad's sister?" The girl's eyes widened. "Yeah, who? Wait a minute. You're the girl from Seattle. Thad told me about you." "He did?" "Yeah. Oh, he'll be so happy you came. Did you like the practice show?" "Absolutely. It was amazing." "Thad was awesome, wasn't he?" "Totally. He killed it." "Well, he's worked his butt off, and it shows." "I'm Trisha, by the way." "I'm Stacy. Do you want to sit?" "Oh, thanks." Trisha sat next to me in the sand. "So you're here for the summer? Like an extended family vacation?" "No, not exactly. I'm staying with my dad for the summer." "Oh, okay. Well, how do you like it here?" I shrugged. "I love it. Thad and his friends have been really nice." Trisha straightened her legs out in front of her and leaned back on her hands. "Yeah, he does have nice friends." "Oh, and Bryce?" She squeezed her shoulders up to her neck. "Isn't he so cute?" And then she batted a hand. "Oh, but I bet he and Chrissy are together now, aren't they?" I jolted my head back. "I don't think so. Chrissy told me she just wanted friends right now."
Yeah, that's what Connor always says, but only because he has a crush on every girl he meets.
I chuckled. "What about Thad?" Trisha gave me a brief, amused look, then said, "Well, Thad's a lot more picky." I exhaled a large breath. "Yeah, I guess he would have to be, considering he's the neighborhood dream boy." Trisha threw her head back and laughed. "Tell me about it." Then she lightly slapped me on the shoulder with the back of her hand. "But I hear you're kind of the same way. Thad told me about all those guys at the pool last night." Oh, do you guys talk a lot?" Trisha leaned back on her hands again. "Well, when I'm home we do. I'm just here for the summer too. Then I'll go back to UCLA in the fall." "UCLA? Wow, that's awesome." "Thanks, I love it there." "Oh look, Thad's finally finished." Trisha got to her feet and ran over to her brother, who was currently getting squeezed by his mom, with a huge kiss plastered on his cheek. I stood too, and stuck my hands in the pockets of my jean shorts. I really wanted to run over to him as well, like his sister, but I felt kind of silly. Slowly, I walked toward the family. Trisha gave Thad a huge hug. Then Thad's dad slapped him on the back, as they exchanged some kind of wakeboard lingo that I didn't understand. Then the little boy yelled up at Thad with excitement, but tried to sound mature and old at the same time. "Your slow approach jump was perfect, but I think your speed jumps can be even faster." Thad looked down at his brother. "Oh, you think so? I'll keep that in mind." "Hey, look what I did with my transformer," the boy cried. Thad crouched to his brother's level and examined his transformer. "Wow, I've never seen him like this before." At that moment, Thad's little sister jumped on his back. "Hey, you!" Thad lifted the girl onto his shoulders and spun around in circles, causing her to giggle with pure delight. Then Trisha said something to Thad in a low voice. Thad stopped short and flipped his head around. He looked shocked. "Stacy." Then his entire family looked my way. Hopefully with my sunglasses on, they couldn't tell how uncomfortable I was. I smiled and waved. Then the dad turned to the little girl. "Here, Ren, how about Daddy gives you a shoulder ride?" The little girl reached out her arms, and her father relieved Thad's shoulders and put her on his own. Thad jogged toward me with a huge grin on his face. "You came!" And before I knew it, Thad embraced me in a tight bear hug. "I told you I would," I said. Thad pulled out of the embrace to look at me. "How did you like it?" I put my sunglasses on top of my head so I could see him better. "I loved it. You didn't tell me it was going to be an actual show." Thad's grin broadened. "Well, we're still working out some kinks, but we're almost there."
We had contestants from all over the country here this morning.
Thad motioned to the lake where all the boats were. "Really? Well, you were definitely the best one out there," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. Thad laughed. "I don't know about that, but thanks." "Are you kidding me?" I said, playfully shoving him in the shoulder. "You were incredible. I can't believe how high you can jump, and how strong you are, and—" I stopped before I could embarrass myself further. I shrugged. I could have watched you all day. Thad laughed again and pulled me in for another hug, but this time he lifted me too, so that my feet came off the ground. I laughed right along with him. He planted my feet again and stepped back, but he kept his hands on my upper arms and looked me straight in the eye. "Thank you so much for coming. It really means a lot to me." Then he swallowed hard, suddenly looking a little nervous. His eyes were bright blue again. It was like the cold of the water sucked the warmth out of his body and pooled all of it in his eyes. And now my cheeks were warm. Why did he have to be so perfect? Thad rubbed my arms up and down. "I'm sorry you had to wake up so early." I batted a hand. "Sleep is overrated." Thad smiled and just stared at me, like he loved looking at me. But then I realized it was just me staring at him. "Ahem," said Thad's father. He held a cooler on one side of him and his wife's hand in the other, as they slowly walked toward us. "Aren't you going to introduce us to your friend, Thad?" "Oh, yeah." Thad took a step back. "This is Stacy. Stacy, this is my mom and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Holbrook." "It's nice to meet you, Stacy," said Mr. Holbrook. He set his cooler on the ground and held out his hand to me. I took it in mine and shook it hard. "She's got a nice firm grip, Thad. This one's a keeper." Neither of us knew what to say to that, but thankfully, Thad's mom stepped in and held her hand out to me. "It's nice to meet you, Stacy." Returning her smile, I took her hand. "It's nice to meet you, too." Then the rest of the family joined us. "Oh, wow," said Thad. "I guess you're going to meet the whole clan today." "Stacy and I are already friends," said Trisha. "We met a few minutes ago. We go way back." I returned Trisha's grin. The strange thing was, I did feel like we were friends already. Thad nodded like he approved. Then he mussed the blonde hair of his brother. "This is Keaton, and this is Wren." The little girl peeked at me from around her father's leg. I smiled and waved at her. "You have a pretty face," Wren said. I let out a breathless laugh. "Thanks, sweetie. You do too." Wren put her little knuckles up to her smiling lips and giggled out a sound that resembled Donald Duck. Everybody chuckled at that. Then Keaton spoke up. "Are you two boyfriend and girlfriend?" Thad mussed the boy's hair again. "We're just friends, dude." "Then why were you hugging her so much?" Keaton asked. Thad blushed at that, and I'm sure I did too. Trisha cracked a smile and looked out at the lake. Again, Thad's mom saved the awkward moment. "We're just happy that he has a nice friend who will come support him." "Yes, that really was very nice of you, Stacy," said Mr. Holbrook. I shrugged. "I loved every minute of it." "Are you two going rock climbing with Bryce and Connor?" said Thad's father. "Do you want to?" Thad asked me. "Absolutely." "Well, your ride is gone," said Mr. Holbrook, motioning to where the boat of Thad's coach used to be. "Do you want me to drive you back to the main docks? But that's not even close to where your friends will be, is it?" "Well, we could hike to the cove. It's not that far from here." Thad looked to me again. "Sure, sounds fun." Thad's parents peered at the both of us, like they were contemplating something. Then they looked at each other, and the mom nodded. "Well, since you know the mountain well, Thad, you can go. But take some water." His dad took off his stringed backpack, opened up their cooler sitting on the ground, and took out 4 plastic water bottles, and put them in the pack. Then he threw the pack to Thad. "Thanks," he replied. "Mom, would you mind taking my wetsuit home?" "Sure thing." Thad peeled out of his wetsuit down to his normal green and yellow swim trunks, then handed the wetsuit to his mother. "Thanks, Mom." "You kids have fun," she said. Then the family all walked back to where their things were on the beach and started packing up. But the father stayed behind. He placed a hand on Thad's shoulder and spoke in a low voice. "Remember, be a real man." That was a weird thing to say. I must have heard him wrong. "I will." Thad said. He almost sounded offended. His dad slapped him on the back. I know you will, he said, his voice back to normal. Then he walked back to where the family was. Do you think I'll be okay in my skateboarding shoes? I asked, lifting up my foot to look at the soles. Oh, I need shoes. Be right back. Thad ran to his family and started looking through a duffel bag. Trisha helped him. I stared at their family with a mixture of confusion and awe. They all seemed to get along, and not just tolerate each other, they liked each other. How odd. But then, I guess I also liked my parents. I just never really showed it. Thad helped his family pack everything up, and they all waved to us as they walked to the parking lot. Ready to go? Said Thad. Sure. How is it you have tennis shoes with you? Well, I almost always go rock climbing with Bryce and Connor after practice. Right. I guess I should have thought about that myself, I said, looking at my shoes again. Thad shrugged. I'll carry you if your feet start to hurt. There is no way I'm letting you carry me, I said. But what I didn't say was that if he did carry me, I would probably enjoy it. Can I put my sweatshirt in that pack? I slipped off my sweatshirt and smoothed my salmon-colored tank top. Thad took it from me and stuffed it in the pack. I'll carry the pack if you want me to, I said. Thad gave me a sly smile as he slipped the pack over his shoulder. There's no way I'm letting you carry the pack. I smirked. Fine. Thad led me along the bank and to a hillside with large boulders from the bottom to the top. It was a little awkward to climb over each one as we ascended, but thankfully the hill wasn't very steep, so we made it to the top in no time. I peered down at the parking lot below us. Then I spotted something I rarely saw. 2 grown-ups kissing and not stopping. Whoa! Your parents must really love each other. What do you mean? Thad looked over the edge with me, then chuckled. Yes, they do. Get a room! Thad shouted down the hill. But whether they heard him or not, they didn't stop. At least they waited until we weren't around. Thad chuckled and shook his head. I glanced over the top of the mountain, which was mostly boulder after boulder, with not a lot of ground in between. But the large rocks were relatively flat, so we could walk across them with little trouble. Since Thad knew where we were going, I let him take the lead. It must be great to have a family like that, I said. Like what? Thad said over his shoulder. You know, a family who supports each other and helps each other and apparently really loves each other. Thad laughed. Actually, it is great. We're all pretty close. How do you guys do it? I don't know. My parents just kind of created that culture, I guess. Wow. Well, I think it's awesome. I just feel bad that you had to witness the dysfunction of my family last night. Thad spun around to face me. Oh, crows, I'm so sorry about that. I had no idea you didn't want your dad to know about the swim team. I batted a hand. Oh, geez. None of that was your fault. But are you okay? He stepped over a couple of rocks until he stood just in front of me. His nearness made my heart speed up. Blast. Of course I am, I told him. Way worse things have happened to me than that. Thad stared at me like he cared about me. Jace never looked at me like that. Sure, I could tell Jace was attracted to me, but I don't ever remember him looking truly concerned. I loved that Thad looked at me that way, but it also unnerved me. He traced his fingers up and down my arms. Are you sure? I shook my head to clear it. Yeah. In fact, it was good that it happened, because my dad and I ended up having a really great talk and cleared a lot of things up. Thad raised his eyebrows. Really? I nodded. We actually used to be really close like you are with your family. But then I shook my head. Anyway, I think I might be able to start talking to him again, like I used to. Thad just kept staring at me straight in the eye as his lips curled up and he nodded slightly. I mostly feel bad that he interrogated you like that, I said. Thad chuckled. Yeah, well, I can't say that I liked it, but I get it. He's just trying to protect you. My dad pulled out his shotgun with Trisha's first boyfriend. Are you serious? I laughed out loud. Wow, was he scared? Thad laughed too. Oh yeah. I laughed so hard when he left the house. But then my dad came to me and said, "Don't you dare laugh at him. It'll happen to you someday." And thanks to your dad, it sorta did. I grimaced. I'm so sorry. Thad shrugged. It's all good. It just means he cares about you. As soon as the words left his mouth, I knew they were true. They confirmed what I felt last night, and my soul lit up again. Then Thad stepped even closer to me. "Why are you crying?" Oh, crows. Why did I always do this at the worst times? I wiped my tears away quickly. "Sorry, I didn't realize that I was. But I'm good." "I know, it's stupid to cry when you're happy." Thad held my gaze and shook his head slightly. "No, it isn't." Then he wrapped his arms around me, and I leaned my head against his shoulder as I returned to the embrace. He slowly caressed his fingers up and down my back. Now my soul was singing and dancing, but I was also super nervous because this was definitely not a friend hug. And that concludes part 6. I hope you come back next week for part 7 of Dad, Thad, and My Skateboard. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic week. Until next time, take care.